The billionaire's lawyer missed the trial, and the new intern took over the case and saved $600 million. Before we start the story, leave in the comments which city you're watching from. And at the end, don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10. Enjoy the story, everyone. The defense chair was empty, and $600 million were about to go down the drain. The federal court of Denver had never seen so many people crammed into a single room. Reporters elbowed each other in the galleries, cameras pointed at every corner, and the air conditioning seemed to have given up working, probably from embarrassment at being present for this looming disaster. Caleb Lawson crossed his arms and looked at the empty chair beside him. 36 years old, founder of Lawson Tech, one of the most influential men in the technology sector in the United States. The kind of CEO who negotiated billion-dollar contracts over coffee and still found time to joke about his own messy hair at board meetings. But at that moment, even Caleb was having trouble finding humor in the situation. His lawyer, the renowned, the expensive, the supposedly infallible Robert Ashford, simply hadn't shown up. Caleb checked his watch, checked his phone. No messages, no calls. Robert Ashford? The man who charged $3,000 an hour and bragged about never losing a case in 20 years, had evaporated like forgotten coffee in a mug. Interesting. Judge Rebecca Doyle looked at the clock for the third time. She was the type of magistrate who made experienced lawyers rethink their career choices. Gray hair pulled back with surgical precision, glasses that seemed specifically designed to make people feel guilty, and a patience that had clearly expired sometime in the past decade. "Mr. Lawson," she said, and her voice cut through the murmur of the room. "Where is your legal representation?" Caleb stood up, adjusting his suit with the calm of someone who had faced worse crises, or at least pretended very well. "Your Honor, it appears my lawyer had an unexpected setback." "Setback," she repeated, savoring the word as if it tasted like nonsense. On the other side of the room, Prosecutor Mark Ellington crossed his arms with the satisfaction of a cat that had just cornered a particularly fat rat. Ellington was bald by choice. He shaved his head every day because he thought it made him look intimidating. In reality, it just made him look like a billiard ball, with legal ambitions and an ego the size of Texas. "Your Honor," Ellington said, not even trying to hide his smile. "If the defense can't even show up to their own trial, perhaps that's a silent confession of guilt." Murmurs ran through the gallery. Reporters typed furiously. Caleb could practically see the headlines forming in real time. But he didn't let himself be shaken, not visibly at least, because Caleb Lawson hadn't built a technology empire by losing his composure in public. He had faced hostile investors, treacherous competitors, and once even a main server fire 3 hours before a crucial launch. An empty chair wasn't going to bring him down. Still, where was Robert? The judge struck the gavel once. "Mr. Lawson, you have exactly 5 minutes to present legal representation, or this court will close the case due to absence of defense." Caleb nodded, keeping his expression neutral. Inside, his mind was working at maximum speed, calculating options, searching for exits. That's when the courtroom's side door opened, or rather, was attacked by a hurricane in human form. A young woman burst through the entrance as if she'd been fired from a defective cannon. She wore a blazer that had clearly seen better days, a skirt that seemed to be an open war with its own zipper, and carried a leather briefcase that, at the exact moment she stumbled on her own heel, flew through the air like a drunk bird. Papers rained down the center aisle. The entire courtroom froze. The young woman fell to her knees, her glasses completely crooked on her face, desperately trying to gather the documents while murmuring a symphony of "No, no, no, please, no." One of the papers landed gracefully on Prosecutor Ellington's Italian shoe. He looked down with an expression mixing disgust and cruel amusement. "This here," he said, holding the paper between 2 fingers as if it were toxic waste, "is a cafeteria receipt." The young woman snatched the paper from his hand with the dignity of a cat that just fell off the table and pretends it planned the whole thing. "It's supporting documentation," she said, convincing absolutely no one. Laughter erupted in the gallery. Judge Doyle removed her glasses, cleaned the lenses with a slowness that promised consequences, and put them back on. "And you would be..." The young woman finally managed to stand up, She adjusted her glasses, adjusted her blazer, tried to adjust her dignity, but that seemed to have been left somewhere between the door and the floor. Maya Turner, Your Honor, Legal Department of Lawson Tech. And what exactly are you doing interrupting my courtroom, Miss Turner? Maya took a deep breath. Her eyes swept the room. The reporters laughing, the prosecutor smiling like a shark, the judge waiting for an answer that made sense. And then she looked at Caleb. And Caleb saw something he didn't expect. Behind the walking disaster, behind the crooked glasses and wrinkled blazer, there was something in her eyes. Something he recognized. Determination. I came to take over the defense, Your Honor. The silence that followed was so thick you could cut it with a knife. And then came the laughter. Prosecutor Ellington literally doubled over the table. Your Honor, is this a federal hearing or a prank show? The intern wants to take on a $600 million case? I'm not an intern, Maya corrected, adjusting her glasses with a gesture that was already starting to seem less nervous. I'm a junior associate. There's a difference. Oh, pardon me, Ellington said, wiping away tears of laughter. The junior associate who trips over her own feet wants to take on one of the biggest corporate cases of the decade. That changes everything. More laughter from the gallery. Maya didn't respond. Instead, she walked to the defense table, ignoring the stares, ignoring the laughter, ignoring every cell in her body that screamed for her to run. She sat down next to Caleb, and then, leaning toward him, she whispered something no one else could hear. Stay calm, Mr. Lawson. Mr. Robert Ashford asked me to come. Caleb blinked. Once, twice. Robert had sent her? Before he could process that information, Maya was already on her feet again, facing the judge. And something had changed. Her posture was different. Her shoulders, previously hunched, were straight. Her chin, previously lowered, was raised. Her eyes, previously nervous, now fixed on the judge with an intensity that made even Ellington stop laughing. Your Honor, Maya said, and her voice didn't tremble. I understand that my entrance wasn't orthodox, and I understand that the prosecution finds this very amusing. She looked at Ellington with a polite smile that had sharp edges. But while the prosecutor was busy laughing, I was reviewing every page of the lawsuit filed against my client, and I can assure the court that I am fully capable of conducting this defense. The prosecutor stopped smiling. The judge tilted her head, studying Maya as if trying to decipher a particularly interesting puzzle. Miss Turner, are you aware that if I allow this and you fail, the consequences for your client will be catastrophic? I am, Your Honor. And are you prepared to assume that responsibility? Maya didn't hesitate. I am. The courtroom held its breath. Judge Doyle remained silent for a long moment. And then, to the surprise of absolutely everyone, she struck the gavel. The defense is authorized to proceed. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Reporters typed as if their lives depended on it. Prosecutor Ellington had the expression of someone who had swallowed a whole lemon. Maya sat down again, opening her briefcase, this time without dropping anything. Caleb leaned toward her, his voice low. Robert sent you? Maya nodded, organizing the documents with an efficiency that contrasted absurdly with her disastrous entrance. He called me at 5 in the morning, said he couldn't come, but that I would know what to do. And do you? Maya raised her eyes to him, and there was something there, a mixture of courage and fear that she transformed into fuel. I know that someone is trying to destroy you, Mr. Lawson, and I know I'm not going to let that happen. Caleb studied her for a moment. That girl who had stumbled on her own entrance, who had scattered papers across the courtroom, who had made everyone laugh. Now she seemed like a completely different person. How old are you, Maya Turner? 29. And how long have you worked for my company? 3 weeks. Caleb let out a low laugh, not of mockery, but of something that resembled admiration. 3 weeks, and you're ready to face one of the biggest law firms in the country for me? Maya adjusted her glasses one last time. Mr. Lawson, with all due respect, I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do. And before Caleb could respond, the judge struck the gavel again. The prosecution may call its first witness. The trial had begun, and Maya Turner, the girl no one took seriously, was about to show what she was made of. Prosecutor Mark Ellington stood up like a peacock on parade day. He adjusted his tie, A rehearsed gesture he probably practiced in the mirror every morning, and walked to the center of the courtroom with the confidence of someone who had already won before even starting. "Your Honor," he said, his voice loaded with false cordiality, "before we proceed, I'd like to clarify a few things for the official record." Judge Doyle raised an eyebrow. "Proceed, Counselor." Ellington turned to Maya with a smile overflowing with poison disguised as sympathy. "Miss Turner, correct?" Maya stood up, shoulders straight, chin up. "Correct." "Miss Turner," he repeated, savoring each syllable, "just so everyone in this courtroom understands who we're dealing with. How long have you been practicing as an attorney?" 3 weeks at Lawson Tech, murmurs in the gallery. 3 weeks, Ellington repeated, turning to the audience as if presenting a joke. "And before that, I worked at a small firm in Ohio." "Ohio," he said, as if the word were an insult. "And there you handled cases of what magnitude? Divorces, traffic tickets, fence disputes between neighbors?" Muffled laughter emerged from the galleries. Maya didn't take the bait. "Various cases, Counselor." Ellington took 2 steps toward her, invading her personal space like a shark circling its prey. "Miss Turner, can you even turn on your office printer? Because from what I saw of your entrance, I'm genuinely concerned about your basic motor coordination." Laughter exploded in the courtroom. Even some journalists laughed. Maya felt her face heat up. She felt everyone's eyes on her, judging, doubting, waiting for her to crumble. And for a second, just 1 second, she almost gave in. But then she looked at Caleb. He wasn't laughing. He wasn't panicking. He watched her with an expression she couldn't fully decipher. But there was something there. Something that seemed to say, "I bet on you. Don't let me down." Maya took a deep breath. "Prosecutor Ellington," she said, and her voice came out firmer than she expected. "I appreciate your concern about my motor skills. I'm happy to inform you that I can turn on printers, make coffee, and even tie my own shoes. Most days." A different kind of laughter emerged from the gallery. Not mocking. Surprised. Ellington frowned, clearly not expecting a response. Maya continued before he could react. "But since we're clarifying things for the official record, perhaps the prosecutor would also like to inform the court how long he's been practicing that intimidating speech in the mirror, because the performance is flawless." Silence. And then, laughter. This time, directed at Ellington. The prosecutor's face turned red. He opened his mouth to respond, but Judge Doyle struck her gavel. "Enough theatrics, Counselor. If you have formal objections to the defense's representation, present them. Otherwise, let's proceed." Ellington swallowed hard, visibly irritated. "No formal objection, Your Honor, just concern for the integrity of the process." "Your concern has been noted," the judge said with a dryness that could dehydrate a cactus. "Now sit down." Ellington returned to his chair, his jaw locked. Maya released the breath she didn't even know she was holding. "Miss Turner," the judge said, turning her attention to her, "you may present your opening statement." Maya nodded. She walked to the center of the courtroom, each step echoing in the silence. She opened the folder, and her stomach dropped. The documents were out of order, completely shuffled, probably mixed up when she had tripped at the entrance and scattered everything across the floor. She flipped through quickly. Contracts, financial reports, a photo of a cat she had no idea where it came from. The damn cafeteria receipt. But the opening statement she had prepared? It wasn't there. Maya felt panic rise up her throat like ice water. The judge waited. The prosecutor waited with a predatory smile. The entire courtroom waited. And Maya had nothing. She looked at Caleb. He realized something was wrong. She saw in his eyes the silent question. What happened? Maya closed the folder. There was no document. There was no prepared speech. There was no safety net. There was only her. And then something happened. Something Maya wouldn't know how to explain later, even if she tried. She stopped searching for the right words. She stopped trying to be the perfect lawyer she had never been. She stopped pretending she wasn't terrified. And she simply started to speak. "Your Honor," she said, her voice clear, "members of the jury, I'm not going to pretend I'm the person you expected to see here today. I'm not Robert Ashford. I don't have 30 years of experience. I don't have an office overlooking Central Park." She paused, looking directly at the jurors. "What I do have are facts, and in the next few hours, I'm going to show this court that my client, Caleb Lawson, is not the villain the prosecution wants you to believe. I'm going to show that the accusations against him are based on distortions, half-truths, and, as I intend to prove, fabricated evidence. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. The prosecution wants you to look at Mr. Lawson and see a greedy billionaire. I'm going to ask you to look at the evidence and see the truth. Maya took a deep breath. The defense is ready to proceed, Your Honor. She returned to her chair, her legs shaking beneath her skirt, but her face unwavering. Caleb leaned toward her. Where was that speech in your briefcase? Maya kept her eyes fixed forward. It wasn't. I just made it up. Caleb was silent for a moment, and then, so low that only she could hear. Maybe I should have let my expensive lawyers disappear sooner. Maya finally looked at him. Was that a compliment? Caleb smiled, a small smile, almost imperceptible. It's the closest you're going to get from me for now. Maya didn't know what to say, but for the first time since she had stumbled into that courtroom, she felt something she didn't expect. Hope. The court went into a 15-minute recess. Maya took the opportunity to reorganize her briefcase, this time carefully, separating the documents by category and discreetly removing the photo of the cat that she still didn't know where it had come from. Caleb was surrounded by two assistants who had appeared out of nowhere, whispering updates about the media coverage of the case. From what Maya could gather, the headlines were divided between "Billionaire abandoned by his own lawyer" and "Mysterious intern takes on $1 million case." Neither was particularly flattering. She sighed, trying to focus on the documents. That's when her phone buzzed. Maya looked at the screen. Unknown number. The message was short. Give up. She frowned. Probably a prank. Some joker who had gotten her number. She swiped to delete. The phone buzzed again. You don't know what you're getting into. Maya felt a chill on the back of her neck. Her fingers hovered over the screen. Another buzz. Last chance. And then came the photo. Maya felt the air vanish from her lungs. It was her mother's living room, in Ohio. The floral armchair her mother loved. The little table with family photos. The cup of tea she always left on the left side. And in the corner of the image, through the kitchen window, a silhouette. Someone had taken that photo from inside the house. Someone was there. The phone slipped from Maya's hands. She tried to catch it in the air, but in the process knocked over the entire briefcase, scattering documents across the floor for the second time that day. No, 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 she murmured, falling to her knees to collect the papers. Her hands were shaking so much she could barely hold the pages. Miss Turner? Caleb's voice made her freeze. He was standing beside her, looking at the chaos on the floor. Is everything okay? Maya forced a smile that probably looked more like a grimace. Everything's great. Just gravity. You know how it is. It's especially strong today. Caleb didn't seem convinced. He crouched down, picking up some papers that had flown away. You're pale. Courtroom lighting makes everyone look like a ghost. Maya. The way he said her name, without the miss, without formality, made something tighten in her chest. He was really looking at her, not the way a client looks at his lawyer, the way one person looks at another when they know something is wrong. Maya looked away, picking up the phone from the floor and stuffing it in her blazer pocket before he could see the screen. I'm fine, Mr. Lawson. Really? Caleb was silent for a moment. Then he stood up, extending his hand to help her. Maya hesitated before accepting. His hand was firm, warm, secure in a way she didn't expect. If someone is threatening you, he said, his voice low enough that only she could hear, I need to know. Maya let go of his hand too quickly. Nobody's threatening me. Why would anyone threaten me? I'm just a lawyer from Ohio who doesn't know how to work printers, remember? Caleb didn't laugh. Robert Ashford was the best lawyer money could buy. He never missed a hearing in 20 years. And suddenly, in the most important case of his career, he just disappears. Maya felt her stomach sink. What are you saying? I'm saying that maybe Robert didn't just decide not to come. The words hung in the air between them. Maya thought about the messages, the photo, the silhouette in her mother's kitchen window. And suddenly, everything made horrible sense. Robert hadn't abandoned Caleb. Robert had been removed. And now, whoever was behind this had turned their attention to her. Excuse me, Maya said, her voice higher than she intended. I need to go to the restroom. She didn't wait for an answer. She walked quickly, crossing the side hallway until she found a window overlooking the parking lot. And there it was, a black SUV. Dark windows, parked in the same spot since Maya had arrived that morning. She remembered because she had thought it strange that such a large car was taking up 2 spaces. As she watched, the headlights flashed once, like a warning. Or a promise. Maya backed away from the window, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her ears. She grabbed her phone. Her fingers trembled as she typed a message to her mother. "Mom, is everything okay there?" The seconds of waiting felt like hours. The reply came. "Everything's fine, dear. I just made tea. Why do you ask?" Maya let out her breath. She was okay. Her mother was okay. For now. Another message arrived. Unknown number again. How sweet. She makes tea at 10:47 every morning. Creature of habit. Easy to find. Maya felt her legs weaken. They knew her mother's schedule, knew where she lived, knew that Maya was checking. They were watching both of them. She leaned against the wall, trying to breathe, trying to think. Part of her wanted to run, catch the first flight to Ohio, get her mother out of the house, disappear. Leave Caleb Lawson and his $600 million to whoever wanted them. But then she thought about Robert. Robert, who had called at 5 in the morning with a strange voice. Robert, who had asked her to go in his place without explaining why. Robert, who had only said, "You'll know what to do. I trust you." What had happened to him? What would happen to her if she continued? What would happen to her mother if she gave up now and whoever was behind this decided that witnesses were a problem? Maya closed her eyes. There was no safe choice. There was no easy way out. There was only moving forward and hoping to be smarter than them. She took a deep breath. Once, twice, and then straightened her shoulders and returned to the courtroom. Caleb watched her approach, his eyes scanning her face for something she was determined not to show. "Everything settled?" he asked. Maya sat down, opening her briefcase with a calm she didn't feel. "Everything settled. You took a while? Line at the women's restroom. You know how it is." Caleb clearly didn't know, and clearly didn't believe it. But before he could say anything, Judge Doyle returned to her position and struck the gavel. "Recess is over. The prosecution may call its first witness." Maya looked forward, focusing on the judge, on the prosecutor, on anything that wasn't the weight of the phone in her pocket or the image of the black SUV burning in her mind. Beside her, Caleb leaned in. "Maya," he whispered, "if you're in danger—" "I'm in the same danger as you, Mr. Lawson," she responded, without looking at him. "The difference is I don't have $600 million to lose. I only have a mother in Ohio who makes tea at 10:47 in the morning." Caleb was silent, and Maya noticed, from the corner of her eye, something change in his expression. It wasn't pity. It wasn't corporate concern. It was anger. The kind of cold, controlled anger of someone who doesn't tolerate innocent people being dragged into his battles. "Nobody's gonna hurt your mother," he said, his voice low like steel. "I promise." Maya finally looked at him. "You can't promise that." "I can," Caleb said, "and I will prove it." Before she could respond, the prosecutor's voice cut through the air. "The prosecution calls its first witness, Daniel Vance, former chief financial officer of Lawson Tech." The trial had resumed. Tuck and Maya Turner, with threats in her pocket and fear in her heart, had no choice but to keep fighting. Daniel Vance was the type of witness that made defense lawyers lose sleep. Former chief financial officer of Lawson Tech, impeccably combed gray hair, a suit that cost more than Maya's annual rent. He sat in the witness stand with the confidence of someone who had already rehearsed every word he was going to say. And from what Maya could see, every word was devastating. "Mr. Vance," Prosecutor Ellington said, strutting in front of the jury, "can you confirm that you witnessed the defendant, Caleb Lawson, instructing employees to alter financial reports?" "I can confirm that," Vance responded, without hesitation. Murmurs in the gallery. "And do you have documentation that proves these alterations?" "I do. They were attached to the case as Exhibit 14A. Maya quickly leafed through the documents. The so-called Exhibit 14A was a set of financial reports with handwritten notes that supposedly belonged to Caleb. She looked at him. "Is this your handwriting?" Caleb shook his head, his jaw locked. "Never saw these documents in my life." Maya turned her attention back to Vance. Something wasn't right. The man was too polished, too confident, as if he knew exactly how everything was going to end. And then she remembered. The lunchbox. The night before, Maya had stayed late at the office, trying to familiarize herself with the case. At 11 at night, hungry and without money for delivery, she had gone to the break room looking for something edible. That's when she found a thermal lunchbox forgotten behind the coffee machine. A children's lunchbox with dinosaur prints, clearly out of place in that glass and steel office. Maya was going to ignore it, but something made her open it. Inside, instead of old sandwiches, there was a flash drive. No label, no identification, just a small yellow sticker with one word written by hand: truth. Maya had taken the flash drive home but couldn't open the files. They were encrypted. She threw it in her bag, planning to hand it over to the IT department the next morning. But the next morning brought the chaos of the trial, and she had completely forgotten. Until now, Maya reached into her bag. Her fingers found the small, cold object. The flash drive was still there. "Miss Turner?" The judge's voice brought her back. "Does the defense have questions for the witness?" Maya stood up. Her brain was working at maximum speed. "I do, Your Honor. But first I would like to present new evidence." Ellington stood up immediately. "Objection. The defense cannot present evidence that has not been previously catalogued." "Your Honor," Maya said, keeping her voice steady, "this evidence was discovered last night on the premises of Lawson Tech. Given the last-minute nature of my participation in this case, there wasn't sufficient time for prior cataloging. I request that the court consider its relevance before dismissing it." Judge Doyle studied Maya for a long moment. "What type of evidence?" Maya held up the flash drive. "A digital storage device, Your Honor, found hidden in the office." "Hidden where, exactly?" Maya took a deep breath. "Inside a thermal lunchbox, behind the coffee machine." The silence that followed was almost comical. The judge removed her glasses. "Miss Turner, are you telling me that the defense intends to present evidence found inside a lunchbox?" "Yes, Your Honor." "What kind of lunchbox?" Maya felt her face heat up. "A children's lunchbox with dinosaur prints." Someone in the gallery laughed, then another. Within seconds, the entire courtroom was stifling laughter. Even Judge Doyle seemed to fight against a smile. "Dinosaurs," she repeated. "Tyrannosaurus specifically," Maya said, because apparently her mouth had decided to function independently of her brain. "Very well drawn, actually." More laughter. Ellington seized the moment. "Your Honor, this is ridiculous. The defense wants us to believe that crucial evidence was stored in a child's lunchbox? Is this a joke?" "It's not a joke, prosecutor," Maya responded, her voice gaining firmness. "It's exactly where someone would hide something they didn't want found. Who looks for evidence behind a coffee machine inside a children's lunchbox?" The laughter died. Maya continued. "Someone put that flash drive there. Someone who had access to the office, but couldn't be seen storing documents. Someone who wanted the truth to be found, but couldn't reveal their identity." The judge studied her for a moment. "And you have no idea who left this flash drive?" Maya thought about Robert Ashford. The phone call at 5 in the morning. The inexplicable disappearance. "No, Your Honor, I don't." "But she had a hunch," Judge Doyle sighed. "The court accepts the evidence provisionally, subject to authenticity analysis. Officer, please connect the device to the system." The court officer took the flash drive and inserted it into a computer connected to the screens in the room. The first files appeared. Bank records, dozens of them. Transfers between corporate accounts, dates, amounts. And then Maya saw it. The dates of Caleb's supposed financial alterations, the ones Daniel Vance had sworn to witnessing, didn't match. The documents on the flash drive showed that the original reports had been modified 3 months after Caleb had supposedly made the notes. And the modification had come from a computer that didn't belong to any employee of Lawson Tech. It belonged to Crowell Industries. The courtroom erupted in commotion. Ellington turned red. Daniel Vance, for the first time, looked nervous, and Caleb looked at Maya as if she had just turned water into wine. "How did you?" he began. "Luck," Maya said, still processing what she had found. A lot of luck. But it wasn't just luck, and she knew it. Someone had planted that flash drive for her to find. Someone who knew Robert wouldn't come. Someone who was betting that the rookie lawyer from Ohio would be curious enough to open a dinosaur lunchbox at 11 at night. Whoever was behind the threats, There was someone on the other side trying to help her. The question was, who? Maya looked at the black SUV still parked outside. She had just poked something much bigger than $600 million, and there was no going back now. Daniel Vance was still on the witness stand, and for the first time since he had sat there, he no longer looked so confident. The documents from the flash drive still glowed on the courtroom screens. Dates that didn't match, modifications that came from Kroll Industries computers, a digital trail that contradicted every word he had said. Maya stood up, feeling the weight of everyone's eyes on her. "Mr. Vance," she began, "you stated under oath that you witnessed my client instructing employees to alter financial reports. Correct?" Vance adjusted his tie. A small gesture, almost imperceptible. But Maya noticed. "Correct. And you stated that these alterations occurred in March of last year?" "Yes." Maya pointed to the screen. "Then how do you explain that the metadata on these documents shows they were modified in June, 3 months later?" Vance blinked. There must be a technical error. And how do you explain that this modification was made from an IP address registered to Kroll Industries? Not Lawson Tech?" The murmur in the gallery grew. Vance looked at Ellington, seeking help. The prosecutor was too busy frantically flipping through papers, pretending he had everything under control. "I don't have the technical knowledge to. You're the former chief financial officer of a technology company," Maya cut in. "You want this court to believe you don't understand the basics of metadata?" "Objection!" Ellington finally stood up. "The defense is intimidating the witness." "I'm asking questions, prosecutor. If that intimidates your witness, maybe the problem isn't me." The judge struck the gavel once. "Objection overruled. The witness will answer." Vance swallowed hard. That's when the courtroom door burst open with a crash, and chaos stumbled in. Jude Ramirez looked like he had run a marathon. Disheveled hair, crooked glasses, shirt untucked, sweat dripping down his forehead. He was carrying a stack of reports so high he could barely see where he was walking. "Wait," he shouted, rushing down the aisle. "I have more! I found more things!" The bailiff tried to stop him. "Sir, the court is in session." Jude dodged with unexpected agility for someone clearly averse to physical exercise. "It's urgent. It's about the case." He kept running, and then the untied shoelace decided this was its moment to shine. Jude tripped. The stack of reports exploded through the air like paper fireworks. Pages rained all over the courtroom, on the benches, on the floor, in the jurors' laps. One landed delicately on Judge Doyle's head. The silence that followed was deafening. The judge removed the paper with the slowness of someone choosing words very carefully. "Who," she said, "are you?" Jude got up from the floor, his glasses now completely sideways. "Jude Ramirez, Your Honor. Financial analyst at Lawson Tech. Sorry about the entrance. I ran 12 blocks. I'm not much of a runner, you could tell." Maya intervened quickly. "Your Honor, Mr. Ramirez is part of the financial analysis team. He was verifying the documents from the flash drive." "And what did he find that justifies turning my courtroom into a paper storm?" Jude finally located the page he was looking for. Crumpled, but readable. "This," he raised it triumphantly. "The bank transfers. I tracked all of them. $47 million sent to an account in the Cayman Islands in 12 transfers over 6 months. Murmurs in the gallery. "And where did these transfers come from?" Maya asked. Jude smiled. "From a corporate account at Kroll Industries." The courtroom erupted in commotion. Maya turned to Vance, who was now visibly pale. "Mr. Vance, were you aware of these transfers?" No. You were the chief financial officer. 47 million went unnoticed?" "This has nothing to do with me. You left Lawson Tech 8 months ago. 2 weeks later, you started working as a consultant for Kroll Industries. Interesting coincidence, don't you think?" Vance was silent. Maya felt her heart race. She was navigating unknown waters, using terms she barely understood, hoping not to make a technical mistake that would destroy everything. But she couldn't stop now. "Mr. Vance," she said, her voice firm, "you lied under oath today. You fabricated testimony to incriminate an innocent man, and you did this at whose behest?" "Objection," Ellington shouted. "This is speculation. It's logical deduction based on documentary evidence," Maya responded without taking her eyes off Vance. "Unless the prosecutor has a better explanation for 47 million in ghost transfers?" Ellington opened his mouth, closed it, Opened it again. Nothing came out. Judge Doyle leaned forward. Mr. Vance, I'm going to ask once, and only once. Are you aware that perjury is a federal crime? Vance was sweating now. The impeccable man who had entered the courtroom had disappeared, replaced by someone who clearly saw his life crumbling in real time. I need to speak with my lawyer. You're on the witness stand, not in the defendant's seat. Yet, the judge added, answer the defense's question. Silence. Vance looked at Ellington. At the gallery, at the door, as if calculating his chances of escape. And then, with the voice of someone who knew he had lost, I refused to answer on the basis of the Fifth Amendment. The gallery exploded. The Fifth Amendment. The right not to incriminate himself. The prosecution's star witness was officially protecting himself from criminal charges. Maya felt her legs tremble. It worked. It really worked. The judge struck the gavel 3 times. Silence. The court will recess for 1 hour. Mr. Ellington, I strongly suggest you reevaluate the prosecution's position. Ellington looked like he had swallowed a whole lemon. Vance stepped down from the witness stand like a defeated man, avoiding looking at anyone. Maya sat down, exhausted. Jude approached, still trying to straighten the crumpled papers. Did I do well? He whispered. I practiced all night. My mom said I seem confident when I speak slowly, but I forgot. You were perfect, Jude. Caleb leaned toward Maya. Where did you learn to do that? Maya let out a nervous laugh. I didn't learn. I was improvising and praying not to make any fatal mistakes. Well, it seemed very convincing. That's what happens when you're too terrified to hesitate. Caleb studied her for a moment, something changing in his eyes. You're amazing. You know that? Maya felt her face heat up. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Impressive. But the witness was just the appetizer. Wait until you meet the chef. Maya looked at the window. The black SUV was still there. And something told her the real battle hadn't even started yet. The first thing Maya did when the recess started was grab her phone. Not to check messages, to make a call. Hello? Her mother's voice sounded confused. Maya, you never call at this time. Mom, listen, I need you to do exactly what I'm going to say. No questions. Silence on the other end. Maya, what's happening? Mom, no questions. Please. Something in Maya's tone must have communicated the urgency, because her mother didn't argue. Okay, what do you need? Remember Aunt Carol? I want you to go to her house. Now, take only what's necessary. Don't tell anyone where you're going. Maya, you're scaring me. I know, Mom, and I'm sorry, but I need you to trust me, just for a few days. Can you do that? A long pause. Maya could imagine her mother on the other end, holding the phone with trembling hands, trying to understand what was happening. Does this have to do with your new job? Maya closed her eyes. It does. Are you in danger? Not if you do what I asked. Another silence. And then, with the firm voice Maya had known since childhood, the voice her mother used when things got difficult and there was no room for weakness. I'll leave in 10 minutes. I'll call you when I get to Carol's. Thank you, Mom. I love you. I love you too, my daughter. And Maya? Yes. Finish them. Maya smiled, her eyes burning. You got it. She hung up and immediately turned to Jude, who was organizing papers on a nearby table. Jude, do you know how to make a sworn statement? Jude blinked. A sworn statement? Like an affidavit? Exactly that. I mean, I know the format, but that's not exactly my area. Great, you're going to help me draft one now. In the next 20 minutes, Maya dictated while Jude typed frantically on the laptop. She documented everything. The anonymous messages, the photo of her mother inside the house, the black SUV parked outside since morning, the exact time of each threat. When she finished, she signed. Jude signed as a witness, and Maya took photos of each page. Now, she said, I need you to send this to 3 different addresses. She dictated. Her personal email, the email of a former law professor she trusted blindly, and, after a moment's hesitation, the email of the legal department of the Federal Court of Denver. If something happens to me, Maya said, her voice calm, this ensures the threats are documented, and that whoever is behind this can't pretend innocence. Jude looked at her with an expression mixing admiration and terror. Maya, do you really think they would do something? Maya thought about Robert. The phone call at 5 in the morning. The disappearance without explanation. I think powerful people do terrible things to protect their secrets, Jude, and I'd rather be prepared. She put her phone in her pocket, feeling, for the first time since the threats began, a little more in control. "Done," she said. "Now I'm going to get some coffee." She didn't get the coffee, because that's when the main doors of the courthouse opened and the air seemed to get colder. Damien Crowell entered as if the world belonged to him. 50-something, gray hair combed back with millimetric precision, a suit that probably cost more than Maya's car. He walked with the confidence of someone who had never heard the word no in his entire life, or who had destroyed anyone foolish enough to say it. His eyes swept the lobby until they found Maya, and he smiled. It wasn't a normal smile. It was the kind of smile a predator gives before attacking. Calculated, cold, promising things Maya preferred not to imagine. She felt a chill run down her spine, but this time, the chill came accompanied by something different. She had protected her mother, had documented the threats, had created a trail that couldn't be erased. Crowell could threaten her all he wanted. She was no longer defenseless. He walked toward her, each step echoing on the marble floor. The people around seemed to instinctively move away, creating an invisible corridor between him and Maya. Even the reporters kept their distance. He stopped less than a meter from her. "So," he said, his voice smooth as silk over steel, "you're the girl who's playing lawyer." "Junior associate, actually. There's a difference." "Not to me." Crowell tilted his head, studying her. "You put on quite a show in there. Impressive for someone so inexperienced." "Thank you. I practice in the mirror." Crowell's smile didn't waver. "Do you know who I am, Miss Turner?" "Damien Crowell, founder of Crowell Industries, former partner of my client, and apparently the person whose bank transfers are causing quite a bit of embarrassment in this courthouse." Something flashed in his eyes. "Something dangerous. You're brave," he said. "Or stupid. I haven't decided which yet. Maybe a little of both. It's a popular combination in Ohio." Crowell took a step forward. Maya didn't step back. He leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You're asking to get hurt, girl. People much more powerful than you have tried to stand up to me. Know where they are now?" Maya held his gaze. "They disappeared," Crowell continued. "Just like your friend Robert, just like anyone who gets in my way." Robert, he had just confirmed what Maya suspected. "Are you threatening me?" she asked, her voice clear enough for anyone nearby to hear. "I'm warning you, there's a difference." "Interesting." Maya crossed her arms. "Because in the last 40 minutes, I received anonymous threats, including a photo of my mother inside her own house. I documented everything, signed a sworn statement, and sent copies to 3 different addresses, including the legal department of this courthouse." Crowell's smile froze. "So if anything happens to me or to my mother or to anyone I know," Maya continued, "there will be a very, very clear trail pointing directly to you." Silence. Maya took a step forward, closing the distance between them. "Besides," she said, "is that cologne expensive or does it just reek of guilt?" The silence that followed was absolute. And then, from somewhere behind Crowell, laughter exploded. Then another, and another. A small crowd had formed around them. Reporters, courthouse employees, onlookers. Everyone had heard the final part, and they were laughing at Damien Crowell. His face transformed. The predatory smile disappeared, replaced by controlled fury. "You're going to regret this," he said through clenched teeth. "Maybe, but at least I'll regret it with a clear conscience, and my mother's safe." Crowell stood still for a moment, his fists clenched, and then, without another word, he turned and marched away. The crowd began to disperse. Maya leaned against the wall, her legs finally giving in to the trembling she had been holding back. Caleb approached, his expression worried. "What happened?" Maya let out a shaky laugh. "I provoked one of the richest men in the country and probably shortened my life expectancy by about 10 years. "You're shaking." "It's the adrenaline." Caleb took off his own jacket and placed it over her shoulders. "What did he say?" Maya thought about the threat, about Robert, about the confirmation that her suspicions were right. He mentioned Robert, said he disappeared like others who tried to stand up to him. Caleb tensed. He admitted that? Not directly, but it was enough. Maya looked at him. "What happened to Robert wasn't an accident, Caleb, and whatever he discovered is on that flash drive." The courthouse bell rang. Maya returned Caleb's jacket and straightened her shoulders. "Thank you for the jacket." "Anytime," he paused. "And Maya?" "Yes? That thing about the cologne? Brilliant," Maya smiled. I know. And together they returned to the courtroom. Prosecutor Ellington looked like a man trying to save a ship that was already sinking. "Your Honor," he said, his voice recovering some of the lost confidence, "the prosecution would like to present Exhibit 27B, security footage from the Silver Peak Hotel proving the defendant's presence at illegal meetings with foreign investors." Maya felt Caleb tense beside her. "Those meetings never happened," he whispered. "I know," Maya responded. "Leave it to me." The courtroom lights dimmed as the screens came to life. Grainy images of a hotel lobby appeared, white marble, enormous chandeliers, people walking hurriedly. And then, there he was, Caleb Lawson entering the hotel, greeting a group of men in suits, walking toward the elevators. The timestamp blinked in the corner, March 15th, 9:47 p.m. As you can see, Ellington narrated, the defendant attended the Silver Peak Hotel on the night of March 15th, where he met with representatives from offshore companies to discuss illegal fund transfers. Murmurs in the gallery. Maya studied the images carefully. Something was wrong. She could feel it, but couldn't identify exactly what. And then she saw it. The clock. In the corner of the lobby, partially visible behind a column, there was a decorative wall clock. One of those antique clocks that luxury hotels love to display. And the time on the clock didn't match the footage timestamp. The timestamp said 9:47 p.m. The clock on the wall showed 6:20 p.m. A difference of more than 3 hours. Maya stood up. "Your Honor, the defense requests a pause in the presentation." Ellington spun toward her. "Objection! The defense cannot interrupt the presentation of evidence." "I can if there are irregularities in the evidence presented," Maya cut in, "and there are." The judge raised her hand. "Explain yourself, Miss Turner." Maya walked to the screen, her heart pounding hard. "If the court observes the left corner of the image, you'll see a wall clock partially visible. The timestamp indicates 9:47 p.m., but the clock on the wall clearly shows 6:20 p.m. Silence. All eyes turned to the screen. "This is," Ellington began. "A discrepancy of 3 hours and 27 minutes, Maya completed, which suggests the timestamp was tampered with. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. "This is absurd," Ellington protested, his face starting to turn red. "The defense is inventing problems where there are none. Wall clocks can be wrong." "Maybe," Maya agreed, "but there's another problem." She pointed to the image of Caleb entering the hotel. "My client is wearing a navy blue suit in this footage, correct?" Ellington frowned. "So what?" Maya turned to Caleb. "Mr. Lawson, can you inform the court where you were on March 15? Caleb stood up. "In San Francisco, attending the annual technology conference. There are hundreds of photos and videos proving my presence there throughout the day and night." "And what were you wearing at that event?" Caleb almost smiled. "A gray suit. I have photos in the outfit." Maya turned to the judge. "Your Honor, the defense can prove that Mr. Lawson was in San Francisco on March 15th, wearing a completely different suit from what appears in this footage, which means either my client has the gift of bilocation or this evidence was fabricated." A laugh escaped from someone in the gallery. "The intern is good," someone whispered loud enough for everyone to hear. More laughter. "Lawyer," another person corrected. "She's a lawyer." Silence. The judge struck the gavel, but Maya noticed something in her eyes, something that looked like approval. Ellington was visibly sweating now. "Your Honor, the defense is making speculations. Speculations based on visual evidence that the prosecutor himself presented," Maya responded. "If the prosecution has so much confidence in the authenticity of these images, they shouldn't have a problem requesting an independent technical analysis. The defense asks that the court order a verification of the original metadata from the Silver Peak Hotel footage." Judge Doyle leaned forward. "Prosecutor Ellington, did the prosecution obtain this footage directly from the hotel?" Ellington hesitated. It was a hesitation of only half a second, but the entire courtroom noticed. The footage was provided by a reliable source. What source? Another hesitation. Kroll Industries obtained the images through their own investigation channels. Maya felt her blood run cold. Kroll had provided the evidence. The same evidence that now appeared to have been tampered with. "Your Honor," Maya said, her voice firm despite the internal turmoil, "the defense requests that the court contact the Silver Peak Hotel directly to obtain the original footage from the security system." If the images are authentic, there's no reason to fear verification. The judge nodded slowly. The court orders that the Silver Peak Hotel provide complete access to security footage from March 15th, including original metadata. Until this verification is completed, Exhibit 27B will be considered inadmissible. Ellington opened his mouth to protest. And prosecutor, the judge added, I suggest you carefully review all other evidence provided by Kroll Industries. This court does not tolerate manipulation. Ellington's face went from red to a concerning shade of purple. In the gallery, Maya heard more whispers. She's destroying him. Who is this girl? Does anyone know her name? Maya returned to her seat, her legs trembling under her skirt. On the outside, she maintained composure. On the inside, she was exhausted. Each victory seemed to cost a piece of her. Each confrontation left her more aware of how alone she was in this fight. A 29-year-old lawyer against an entire system, experienced prosecutors, vengeful billionaires, fabricated evidence. Caleb leaned toward her. Are you okay? Maya didn't answer immediately. She looked at the gallery, at the faces of strangers who were now rooting for her, at the reporters typing her name in headlines. I'm tired, she admitted quietly. But I can't stop now. Caleb was silent for a moment. You're not alone, Maya. I'm here. She looked at him. There was something in his eyes she hadn't seen before, something beyond professional gratitude. Thank you, she said. And for the first time on that endless day, she almost believed it. The second recess of the day was declared at 4 p.m. Maya needed air, needed space, needed 5 minutes away from that suffocating courtroom where every gaze seemed to carry the weight of $600 million. She went out the side door, the same one she had stumbled through that morning, an eternity ago, it seemed now. The Denver air was freezing, the kind of cold that bites the skin and awakens the senses. Maya closed her eyes for a moment, letting the wind cut through her thin blazer. You're going to freeze out here. Caleb's voice made her open her eyes. He was standing a few meters behind, hands in his pockets, his suit impeccable despite everything that had happened. I can handle it, Maya said. I grew up in Ohio. This is spring breeze. Caleb smiled and approached, stopping beside her. For a moment, neither of them said anything. They just stood there, looking at the nearly empty parking lot, breathing the cold air. How are you? He asked. In one piece. More or less. More or less. Maya let out a humorless laugh. This morning, I was just a junior lawyer who barely knew where my own desk was. Now I have a psychopathic billionaire threatening me, a federal prosecutor wanting my head, and my mother hiding at Aunt Carol's house somewhere in Ohio. She paused. So yes, more or less. Caleb was silent for a moment. Is your mother safe? I hope so. She sent me a message when she arrived. Maya swallowed hard. She doesn't know what's happening. Not really. I didn't want to scare her more than necessary. You did the right thing. I did the only thing I could do. Maya looked at him. And you? How's the billionaire who could lose everything? Caleb considered the question. Honestly, better than I expected. Thanks to you. Don't thank me yet. The day isn't over. I know, but... He hesitated. When Robert didn't show up this morning, I thought I was finished. I thought Crowell had won before it even started. And then you came stumbling through that door, with crooked glasses and papers flying everywhere. And you thought you were even more finished? Maya completed. Caleb laughed. For about 30 seconds, yes? And now? He looked at her in a way that made something strange happen in her stomach. Now I think maybe the universe knows what it's doing. Maya felt her face heat up despite the cold. Before she could respond, something caught her attention. In the corner of the parking lot, the black SUV, the same one that had been there since morning, the same one whose headlights had flashed like a warning. It was moving. Caleb, Maya said, her voice changing. What? The SUV accelerated, straight toward them. For 1 second that felt like an hour, Maya was paralyzed. Her brain screamed to run, but her legs wouldn't obey. It was Caleb who reacted. He grabbed her by the waist and pulled her to the side with a strength she didn't expect. They both fell together onto the grass bed next to the sidewalk, rolling away from the asphalt. The SUV passed within inches of where they had been standing a second before. The brakes squealed. The vehicle skidded, recovered control, and accelerated toward the parking lot exit. Within seconds, it had disappeared onto the main street. Silence. Maya was lying on the grass, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her temples. Caleb's weight was partially on top of her, his arms still wrapped around her waist. "Are you?" she began, breathless. "Are you okay?" Caleb raised his head, his face inches from hers. "I should be asking you that. You were almost run over." "We were almost run over." Details. They stayed there for a moment, panting, adrenaline still rushing through their veins. And then, absurdly, Maya started to laugh. It was a hysterical laugh, the kind that happens when the body doesn't know whether to cry or scream. Caleb looked at her as if she had gone crazy. "What are you laughing at?" "At us," Maya managed to say between laughs. "Look at us. Two adults rolling on the grass in a courthouse parking lot, like it's a bad action movie." Caleb blinked, and then he started laughing too. "Well," he said, "maybe it's too early for our first romantic scene, but at least the lighting is good." Maya laughed even harder, the tension finally finding an outlet. "You're ridiculous. I'm a billionaire. We're known for being ridiculous." They stayed there for another moment, laughing like two idiots, lying on the cold grass while the world kept spinning around them. And then Maya stopped laughing, because suddenly she realized something. "Caleb." "Yes?" "They tried to kill us." His laughter died too. "I know. This wasn't a warning. This was a real attempt." Maya sat up, the cold from the grass seeping through her clothes. Her hands were shaking again, but this time it wasn't adrenaline, it was fear. "My mother," she whispered. "What if they know where she is? What if Aunt Carol's isn't far enough?" Caleb sat up beside her. "Maya, look at me." She couldn't. Her eyes were fixed on the spot where the SUV had disappeared. "Maya." His hand touched her chin gently, turning her face to meet his. "I'm going to protect you," he said. "And your mother. I have resources. I have people I trust. From now on, you're both under my protection." "You can't promise that." "I already promised, and I keep my promises." His eyes were steady, determined, the kind of look that doesn't accept discussion. Maya swallowed hard. "Why do you care so much?" Caleb was silent for a moment. "Because you came stumbling into that courtroom and decided to fight for me without even knowing me. Because you're risking everything. Your career, your safety, your family, for someone who was just a name on a lawsuit." He paused. "And because it's been a long time since someone looked at me like a person instead of a number in a bank account." Maya didn't know what to say, so she said nothing. She just sat there, on the cold grass next to a billionaire who had just saved her from a killer SUV, feeling something she hadn't expected to feel that day. Connection. "Let's go inside," Caleb said finally, standing up and offering his hand. "Recess will be over in 10 minutes. Maya accepted his hand. And this time, when their fingers intertwined, neither of them let go immediately. Maya entered the courtroom with grass on her blazer and fire in her eyes. Someone had just tried to kill her. Someone who worked for Damien Crowell, sitting in that gallery with his $5,000 suit and his predator's smile. She wasn't scared anymore. She was furious. "The session is resumed," Judge Doyle announced, striking the gavel. "Does the prosecution have more evidence to present?" Ellington stood up, visibly shaken. He had heard about the incident in the parking lot. Everyone had. The reporters were already typing stories about attempted intimidation and mysterious SUV. "Your Honor, the prosecution requests a postponement to reevaluate." "Denied," the judge cut in. "This trial has suffered enough interruptions. Proceed or close your case." Ellington swallowed hard. "The prosecution closes the presentation of evidence, Your Honor." Murmurs in the gallery. The judge turned to Maya. "Miss Turner, does the defense have additional evidence?" Maya stood up. "We do, Your Honor." That's when the courtroom door opened, and Jude Ramirez entered. This time he wasn't stumbling. He walked with purpose, carrying a thin folder and a laptop under his arm. His hair was still disheveled and his shirt was still untucked on one side, but there was something different in his eyes. Determination. He approached Maya and whispered, "I found everything. Absolutely everything." Maya felt her heart race. "Your Honor," she said, "the defense calls Jude Ramirez as an expert witness." Ellington stood up. "Objection. This man already testified informally. Mr. Ramirez is a certified financial analyst with 7 years of experience," Maya interrupted. "He is qualified to testify about the documents the defense intends to present." The judge considered for a moment. Objection overruled. Mr. Ramirez may testify. Jude walked to the witness stand, taking the oath with a voice that barely trembled. Maya approached. Mr. Ramirez, you had access to the financial records from the flash drive presented earlier, correct? Correct. And you performed a complete analysis of those records in the last few hours? Yes. I didn't sleep, but yes. Some laughter in the gallery. Can you tell us what you found? Jude opened the laptop and connected to the courtroom screens. So, he began, when I looked at the records the first time, I saw the transfers to the Cayman Islands. 47 million. That was already bad, but I kept digging. The screens came to life with graphs and spreadsheets. I found a pattern. With each offshore transfer, there was a corresponding transfer from a secondary Kroll Industries account to a shell company called Pinnacle Holdings. Murmurs grew in the gallery. Pinnacle Holdings, Jude continued, has no registered employees, no physical office, and was created 3 days before the first transfer. But the most interesting thing is who signs as director. He clicked to the next screen. A name appeared prominently. Marcus Webb, Damien Crowell's brother-in-law. The courtroom erupted. Maya looked at Crowell in the gallery. The predatory smile had disappeared. He was motionless, his jaw clenched so tight that Maya could see the muscles jumping. Continue, Mr. Ramirez, Maya said. Jude nodded, gaining confidence. That's not all. I tracked the dates of the transfers and compared them with Lawson Tech's internal records. Each suspicious transfer coincides with dates when Mr. Lawson was traveling, conferences, international meetings, public events. What does that mean? It means someone was waiting for him to leave town to make these transactions. Someone who had access to his calendar. Someone from inside. Jude clicked again. I checked who had access to Mr. Lawson's executive calendar during that period. Only 4 people. His personal assistant, the director of operations, lawyer Robert Ashford, and, he paused dramatically, Daniel Vance, the former chief financial officer who testified this morning. The same Daniel Vance who invoked the Fifth Amendment when questioned about the transfers? Maya asked. The same. The gallery was in an uproar. Reporters typed frantically. Jurors exchanged significant looks. Ellington stood up, his face in a concerning shade of red. Your Honor, this is a circus. The defense is making accusations without concrete evidence. The evidence is on the screen, prosecutor, Maya cut in. Bank records, dates, names, documented connections. If this isn't concrete, I'd like to know what the prosecution's standard is. You're turning this courtroom into a television show. Maya turned to him, her eyes flashing. Let's take a deep breath, prosecutor. Your vein is throbbing more than my overdue rent. Laughter exploded in the gallery. Even some jurors smiled. Ellington turned purple. Your Honor, I demand. Prosecutor Ellington, the judge said, her voice sharp, sit now. He sat down, looking like a balloon that had been popped. Maya turned her attention back to Jude. Mr. Ramirez, is there anything else? Jude hesitated. There is, but... He looked at Maya, then at the judge. It's about Robert Ashford. The silence that fell over the courtroom was absolute. Maya felt her stomach tighten. Continue. Jude took a deep breath. When I was analyzing the access records, I found something strange. 3 days before this trial, someone tried to access Lawson Tech's confidential financial files from an external computer. The access was blocked by the security system, but it was recorded. And where did this access attempt come from? The IP was masked, but I was able to partially trace it. It came from somewhere in Denver. Jude swallowed hard, and along with the access attempt, there was a message left in the system, a warning. What message? Jude clicked one last time. A single sentence appeared on the screen. Look for the flash drive. She will know what to do. Maya stopped breathing. Robert had tried to access the system. Robert had left that message. Robert had hidden the flash drive in the dinosaur lunchbox, knowing that someone would find it. He had planned everything. Your Honor, Maya said, her voice hoarse, the defense believes that Robert Ashford discovered the fraud within Lawson Tech. He tried to gather evidence, but was prevented or silenced before he could complete the work. The flash drive I found wasn't a coincidence. It was a legacy, a last attempt to expose the truth. The courtroom was in absolute silence, and then someone started to applaud. A single clap, coming from somewhere in the gallery. Then another, and another. Within seconds, half the gallery was applauding, discreetly, respectfully, but applauding. The judge struck the gavel. Silence in the court. The applause died, but the message had been sent. Maya looked at Crowell. The man who had entered that courtroom like a king now looked like someone watching his empire crumble in real time. His eyes met Maya's, and there was no predatory smile there anymore. There was hatred. Pure, concentrated hatred. Maya held his gaze, didn't look away, didn't tremble. You tried to kill me, she thought. You threatened my mother. You made Robert disappear. And still, I'm here. Crowell stood up abruptly and left the gallery, his steps echoing in the courtroom's silence. The door slammed behind him with a finality that seemed to say, this isn't over. But Maya knew it was over. At least this battle. Judge Doyle leaned forward. Given the evidence presented by the defense, this court will recess until tomorrow at 9 in the morning, when I will present my preliminary decision. Prosecutor Ellington, I strongly suggest you use this time to reconsider the prosecution's position. She struck the gavel one last time. Court is adjourned. Maya sat down, her legs finally giving out. Caleb approached, placing his hand on her shoulder. You did it, he said. Maya shook her head. Not yet. Tomorrow is the decision. Maya. He waited until she looked at him. You dismantled the entire case. You exposed Crowell. You honored what Robert started. She felt her eyes burn. I wish he was here to see it. Maybe he is, Caleb said softly. Somehow. Jude approached them both, looking like he was about to faint from exhaustion. Did I do well? Maya let out a wet laugh. Jude, you were incredible. Really? Because I thought I was going to throw up at least 3 times, but I managed to hold it, so… Jude, yes, go rest. He smiled, relieved. Good idea. I haven't slept in? What day is it anyway? As Jude walked away staggering, Maya looked at the door through which Crowell had left. The war wasn't over, she knew that, but for the first time she believed she could win. The courtroom had emptied, but Maya was still standing in the hallway, looking at the door through which Crowell had left. The day's adrenaline was finally dissipating, and in its place came an exhaustion she felt in her bones. Every muscle ached, every thought weighed heavy. Maya. Caleb's voice brought her back. He was standing beside her, his suit wrinkled for the first time since she'd met him, his hair slightly out of place. He looked as tired as she was. You can't go home today, he said. Not after what happened in the parking lot. Maya knew he was right. Her tiny apartment in Denver had no doorman, no cameras, nothing but a lock she herself could break with a credit card. I can stay at a hotel. You're staying at my house. It wasn't a question. Maya opened her mouth to protest, but Caleb interrupted her. I have 12 security guards, cameras on every inch of the perimeter, and an alarm system that cost more than most houses in this country. It's the safest place in Denver. She hesitated. Caleb, I don't know if this is appropriate. Please. The word came out different, softer, almost vulnerable. I won't be able to sleep knowing you're somewhere unprotected, he continued. Not after everything you did for me today. Not after almost losing you in that parking lot. Maya looked into his eyes. The confident CEO had disappeared. In his place was just a worried man. A man who had thrown himself in front of an SUV to save her. Okay, she said finally. One night. Caleb let out the breath he'd been holding. Thank you. Caleb's car, an armored sedan that looked more like a luxury tank, took them out of the city. One of the security guards drove, another occupied the passenger seat, and Maya and Caleb rode in the back seat in silence. Maya watched through the window as Denver's buildings gave way to wooded hills and increasingly spaced properties. The city lights fell behind like distant stars. Where exactly do you live? She asked. In the mountains. Far enough to have peace, close enough to get to the office in 40 minutes. Peace, Maya repeated. Must be nice to have enough money to buy peace. Caleb glanced at her. Money buys silence, Maya. Peace is something else. She didn't know what to say. 40 minutes later, they crossed an iron gate that opened automatically. Cameras followed the car as they climbed a winding road surrounded by pine trees. And then Maya saw the house. It wasn't a house, it was a mansion. But not an ostentatious mansion, full of gold and marble like she expected from a billionaire. It was elegant, modern, built in glass and natural stone that blended with the mountain landscape around it. Soft lights illuminated the entrance path, and Maya counted at least 4 men in suits patrolling the visible perimeter. 12 security guards wasn't an exaggeration, she murmured. I never exaggerate when it comes to security. Caleb paused. Especially now. They entered, and Maya was immediately enveloped by warmth. A fireplace crackled in the spacious living room, and the smell of burning wood mixed with something that seemed like food. Are you hungry? Caleb asked, taking off his jacket. Maya was going to say no, but her stomach betrayed her with an audible growl that echoed in the house's silence. Caleb smiled, the first genuine smile since they had left the courthouse. I'll interpret that as a yes. He guided her to the kitchen, which was the size of Maya's entire apartment. Marble countertops, appliances that seemed to belong on a spaceship, and a mountain view through floor-to-ceiling windows. Sit down, Caleb said, pointing to the stools by the center island. I'll make something. Maya blinked. You cook? You seem surprised. You're a billionaire. I thought you were born not knowing where the kitchen is. Caleb laughed as he opened the refrigerator. I wasn't always a billionaire, Maya. I grew up in a 2-bedroom apartment in Seattle. My mother worked 2 jobs, and I learned to cook at 10 because someone needed to make dinner while she was out. Maya watched him as he gathered ingredients with the efficiency of someone who did this frequently. Pasta, tomatoes, basil, olive oil. You never talk about that in interviews, she said, because it's nobody's business. He started chopping the tomatoes. Journalists want to hear about innovation, disruption, the future of technology. They don't want to know that the great Caleb Lawson spent his teens making spaghetti for his tired mother. I want to know. Caleb stopped cutting and looked at her. Then I'll tell you. 30 minutes later, they were sitting on the enclosed porch overlooking the dark mountains. The meal was simple: pasta with fresh tomato sauce, salad, Italian bread, but it was the best thing Maya had eaten in days. Or maybe it was the company. This is incredible, she said, twirling more pasta on her fork. My mother's recipe, the only thing she had time to teach me. She must be proud of you. Caleb was silent for a moment. She passed away 6 years ago. Maya stopped chewing. Caleb, I'm so sorry. Don't be. He took a sip of wine. She lived long enough to see me start the company, to know we had managed to get out of that 2-bedroom apartment. That was all she wanted. Maya didn't know what to say, so she said nothing, just reached her hand across the table and touched his. Caleb looked at their joined hands, then at her. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For not trying to fix it. Everyone always tries to fix it. Some things don't need to be fixed, just accompanied. The moment was interrupted by Maya's phone buzzing on the table. She looked at the screen, her heart racing by instinct. But it wasn't an unknown number. It was her mother. Maya, there are 2 men in suits here at Carol's house. They say they're security guards hired by someone named Caleb Lawson. They said they're going to keep an eye on the house during the night. Is this true? I'm worried. Maya looked at Caleb, her eyes wide. You sent security guards to my mother? He didn't look away. I called my team when you went to the restroom at the courthouse. They arrived in Ohio 2 hours ago. Caleb, I said I was going to protect you both. I keep my promises. Maya felt her eyes burn, her throat closing. She typed a response to her mother with trembling fingers. It's true, Mom. He's my client. The men are there to make sure you and Aunt Carol stay safe. You can trust them. I'll explain everything when this is over. I love you so much. The response came seconds later. If he's taking care of you like this, he must be a good man. I feel better knowing you're not alone. I love you, my daughter. Everything will be okay. Maya put away her phone, a tear escaping before she could stop it. Hey, Caleb said softly, standing up and coming around the table. He knelt beside her chair. Is everything okay? It is. She wiped her face, laughing at herself. It's just that. It's been a long time since someone took care of me like this. What do you mean? I've always been the person who solves things, who takes care of others, who holds everything together even when I'm falling apart inside. She looked at him. I'm not used to someone protecting me, really caring about me. Caleb took her hand. Then get used to it, because I don't intend to stop. He gently pulled her to stand. Now they were close, too close. Maya could feel his warmth, see the golden details in his brown eyes illuminated by the soft light of the porch. Caleb, she began. Maya, I need to tell you something. She waited, her heart pounding against her ribs. "This morning when you came stumbling into that courtroom, I thought my life was over." He paused. "Now I think it's just beginning." "That's very cheesy," she whispered. "I know." "Sounds like a line from a romantic movie." "I know. You're my client. Technically, the company is your client. There's a considerable legal difference." Maya let out a shaky laugh. "You're impossible." "I know." Caleb brought his hand to her face, his fingers tracing the line of her jaw with a gentleness that made her tremble. "But I also know that I can't stop thinking about you since the moment you asked if Crowell's cologne reeked of guilt." Maya should have pulled away, should have said it was too soon, that they barely knew each other, that there were a million reasons why this was a terrible idea. Instead, she leaned forward and kissed him. The kiss started soft, hesitant, almost a question. His lips were soft, gentle, waiting for permission. But when Maya wrapped her arms around his neck, Caleb pulled her closer, one hand on her back, the other still on her face. The kiss transformed into something more, into response, into promise. When they finally separated, both were breathless, Maya's forehead resting against his, eyes closed. "That was," she began. "Better than any courtroom victory," Caleb completed. Maya laughed, opening her eyes. "You really are impossible. And you're incredible." He kissed her forehead. "But you're also exhausted. You need to sleep." As if responding to his words, Maya felt the exhaustion of the entire day crash over her all at once. The adrenaline, the fear, the victories, the kisses, everything was taking its toll. "I prepared a room for you," Caleb said, pulling away gently. "Second floor, third door on the left. It has everything you need." Maya nodded, already feeling her eyelids heavy. "And you?" "My room is at the end of the hall. If you need anything during the night, just knock." She should have made a joke, should have said something witty about billionaires and their guest rooms. But she was too tired. "Thank you, Caleb, for everything." "Sleep well, Maya. Tomorrow we have a battle to win." She went up the stairs, found the room, which was bigger than her entire apartment, and fell on the bed without even changing clothes. She was asleep in seconds. When Maya woke up, the sun was already coming through the curtains. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then the memories of the previous day came back like an avalanche. The courthouse, the evidence, the SUV, the kiss. The kiss! She got up and found hanging on the closet door an elegant navy blue blazer and a white silk blouse. A note was attached to the hanger. "I figured you'd need something for today. I hope it fits. Breakfast is ready when you come down." Maya smiled. Impossible, she thought. Completely impossible. 15 minutes later, dressed and presentable for the first time in 24 hours, she went downstairs. Caleb was in the kitchen, his back to her, preparing something on the stove. The smell of fresh coffee and bacon filled the air. "Good morning," she said. He turned, and the smile that lit up his face made Maya's heart jump. "Good morning. Did the blazer fit?" "Perfectly." She sat at the counter. "Do you have spare women's blazers for all the lawyers who spend the night here?" Caleb laughed. "I had an assistant buy it last night. Perks of having a team available 24 hours. He placed a plate in front of her. Eggs, bacon, toast, fresh fruit. "You need energy," he said. "Today is the day." Maya looked at him. This man who had cooked for her twice in 12 hours, who had sent security guards to protect her mother, who had kissed her under the mountain stars. "Yes," she said. "Today is the day." And together, they had breakfast, ready for the final battle. The federal court of Denver seemed different that morning. Or maybe it was Maya who was different. She entered through the same door she had stumbled through 24 hours earlier, but this time her steps were firm. The navy blue blazer Caleb had provided fit perfectly on her shoulders. The white silk blouse conveyed a confidence she finally felt inside. Caleb walked beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. Neither of them mentioned the kiss from the night before. They didn't need to. It was there, between them, like a silent promise. "Ready?" he asked as they approached the courtroom entrance. Maya took a deep breath. "Ready." The gallery was even more packed than the day before. Reporters occupied every available seat. Cameras positioned themselves in the permitted corners. The air vibrated with an almost palpable expectation. Maya spotted Crowell sitting in the first row of the gallery. He wore another impeccable suit, but there was something different in his posture. A stiffness that wasn't there before. a tension in his shoulders that suggested a poorly slept night. Good, Maya thought. Let him lose sleep too. Judge Rebecca Doyle entered promptly at 9 o'clock. The entire courtroom stood and sat in unison, like a rehearsed choreography. This court is in session, the judge announced. After thorough analysis of the evidence presented by both parties, I am prepared to issue my preliminary decision. The silence that followed was absolute. Maya felt Caleb tense beside her. Under the table, his hand found hers and squeezed briefly. Judge Doyle put on her glasses and opened a folder. In the case of the State versus Caleb Lawson, after review of documentary evidence, witness testimony, and forensic analysis of materials presented by the defense. She paused for what seemed like an eternity. This court determines that all charges against the defendant be suspended, pending additional investigation into the origin and authenticity of the prosecution's evidence. The gallery erupted in murmurs. Maya felt the air leave her lungs in a breath of relief. Furthermore, the judge continued, raising her voice above the noise, based on evidence presented by the defense, this court forwards to the federal public prosecutor a formal recommendation to open an investigation against Crowell Industries for suspected documentary fraud, evidence falsification, and obstruction of justice. Crowell stood up abruptly, his face red. This is a farce. Your Honor, I demand. Mr. Crowell, sit down, the judge said, her voice sharp as steel. You are not a party to this case and have no authorization to speak in this courtroom. I'm not going to sit here while... The gavel struck 3 times. Officer, remove Mr. Crowell if he doesn't sit down immediately. The bailiff took a step forward. Crowell looked around, saw he was surrounded, and sat down slowly, his jaw locked in fury. The judge turned her attention to Maya. Miss Turner, this court recognizes the exceptional work of the defense under extraordinary circumstances. Your dedication to truth and justice is noteworthy. Maya stood up, her legs slightly wobbly. Thank you, Your Honor. Before the judge could adjourn the session, the courtroom door opened. 2 federal agents entered, followed by a third carrying a briefcase. Your Honor, the taller agent said, we apologize for the interruption. I'm Agent Morrison from the FBI. We have urgent information relevant to this case. The judge frowned. Proceed. Agent Morrison walked to the center of the courtroom. Approximately 2 hours ago, 2 individuals were detained in Ohio while attempting to break into a residence. The residence belongs to Carol Turner, aunt of attorney Maya Turner. Maya felt her blood run cold. The individuals were intercepted by the private security team protecting the property. After being detained, both confessed to being hired to intimidate Miss Turner's family as a way to pressure her into abandoning this case. The courtroom went into commotion. And more importantly, the agent continued, both identified who hired them. He turned and looked directly at Crowell. Damian Crowell. The chaos that followed was indescribable. Reporters shouted questions, cameras flashed, people stood up to see better. The judge struck the gavel repeatedly, trying to restore order. Crowell stood up, his face livid. This is a lie. I never. Damian Crowell, Agent Morrison said, walking toward him, you are under arrest for conspiracy to intimidate a witness, obstruction of justice, and fraud. You have the right to remain silent. Maya watched, almost in slow motion, as the agents put handcuffs on the man who had threatened her mother, who had sent an SUV at her, who had made Robert disappear. Crowell fought against the handcuffs, shouting protests and threats, but it didn't help. Within seconds, he was being escorted out of the courtroom, camera flashes capturing every moment of his downfall. The judge struck the gavel one last time. This court is adjourned. What happened next was a whirlwind. Reporters surrounded Maya with questions she could barely process. Caleb tried to make his way through them. Jude appeared from somewhere, taking selfies with the chaos in the background as if he were an excited tourist. Maya, how does it feel to be the lawyer who brought down Damian Crowell? Miss Turner, is it true you've only worked at Lawson Tech for 3 weeks? Maya, are you and Caleb Lawson romantically involved? That last question made Maya and Caleb exchange a quick look. She felt her face heat up. No comment, she said, and heard Caleb stifle a laugh. They managed to leave the courthouse through the back, escaping to the armored car that was waiting. Inside the vehicle, finally in silence, Maya let out the air she seemed to have been holding for hours. It's over, she said, almost unable to believe it. It's really over. Caleb took her hand. Thanks to you. Thanks to the flash drive. Thanks to Jude. Thanks to the security guards you sent to Ohio. She shook her head. I just put the pieces together. You did much more than that, Maya, and you know it. Before she could respond, Caleb's phone rang. He looked at the screen and frowned. It's from the office, one of the security guards. He answered, listened for a few seconds, and his eyes widened. Are you sure? A pause. Okay. We're on our way. He hung up and looked at Maya. What is it? She asked, her heart racing. Robert Ashford is at the office. The Lawson Tech building had never seemed so tall as it did at that moment. Maya and Caleb rode the elevator in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. When the doors opened on the executive floor, Maya held her breath, and there he was. Robert Ashford was sitting in one of the lobby armchairs, looking older and more tired than Maya remembered seeing him in the office hallways. His suit was wrinkled, his beard unshaven, deep circles under his eyes, but he was alive. When he saw Maya, he stood up slowly. You were even better than I imagined, he said, his voice hoarse. Maya didn't know if she wanted to hug him or yell at him. Where were you? Was what came out. You disappeared. You left me alone in that courtroom. You. I know. Robert raised his hand. And I'm sorry, but I had no choice. Everyone has a choice, not when they threaten your family. The silence that followed was heavy. Robert sighed and sat down again, seeming to carry the weight of the world. Crowell found out I was investigating the transfers. 3 weeks ago, I received a package at my apartment. Inside were photos of my granddaughter at school, my daughter picking her up at the playground, my wife at the grocery store. He swallowed hard, and a message, give up or they disappear. Maya felt her stomach sink. Why didn't you go to the police? Because Crowell has people everywhere. Police officers, prosecutors, judges. I didn't know who to trust. He looked at her. So I looked for someone he didn't know, someone from outside the system, someone who didn't have connections that could be corrupted. Me, Maya said. You. But why me? We barely exchanged 2 words in those 3 weeks. Robert smiled for the first time. A tired smile, but genuine. Because I was watching you, Maya. From day one. He paused. And I read your article in college. That one about corporate ethics and legal responsibility. You wrote that justice is not a luxury of the powerful. It's a right for everyone, and lawyers who forget that betray the profession itself. Maya blinked. She had written that years ago, on an afternoon in the library, never imagining anyone would actually read it. I researched all the junior associates in the legal department, Robert continued. I read everything I could find about each one. And when I read your words, I knew. Knew what? That you weren't going to give up. That you would fight even when it seemed impossible. That you were exactly the kind of person I needed. He paused, and I was right. Maya felt her eyes burn. You put the flash drive in the lunchbox, she said. You knew I stayed late at the office. I knew you were too curious to ignore a dinosaur lunchbox behind the coffee machine. He gave a weak laugh. It was my granddaughter's. It seemed appropriate. Maya couldn't help it. She laughed too, a wet laugh mixed with tears that finally escaped. You're crazy, she said. I'm a lawyer. It's basically the same thing. Caleb, who had remained silent until then, approached. Robert? Are you okay? Do you need anything? I need a shower, a bed, and probably therapy, Robert replied. But first, I needed to see you two. I needed to know it had worked. He looked at Maya with something that resembled pride. You saved the company, Maya. Saved Caleb. And probably saved my family too, because now that Crowell is in jail, my granddaughter can go back to the playground without me having nightmares. Maya wiped away her tears. You could have told me, could have prepared me. If I had told you, you would have acted differently. You would have overthought it. Your strength was exactly in not knowing, in reacting with instinct, with truth. He smiled. You were perfect because you were yourself. Maya didn't know what to say, so she did the only thing that seemed right. She crossed the space between them and hugged Robert Ashford, the man who had bet everything on her without her knowing. Thank you, she whispered, for trusting me. Robert returned the hug, giving awkward pats on her back. Thank you, Maya Turner, for proving I was right. When they separated, Caleb was smiling. Well, he said, I think we have a lot to celebrate, but first, Robert, you really need a shower. Robert laughed. Still the same polite Caleb as always. Maya looked at the two men in front of her, the billionaire who had become much more than a client, and the lawyer who had bet his entire case on a girl from Ohio who stumbled in courtrooms. 24 hours ago, she was just a junior associate that nobody took seriously. Now, she was the woman who had brought down Damian Crowell. And this was just the beginning. 6 months later, Maya still hadn't gotten used to the plaque on her office door. Maya Turner, Chief Legal Officer. Every time she passed it, she felt like pinching herself to make sure she wasn't dreaming. The girl from Ohio who stumbled in courtrooms now had a corner office overlooking the Denver mountains. Life was full of surprises. That morning, however, Maya didn't have time to admire the view. Caleb had called a press conference to announce Lawson Tech's new expansion project, and she needed to be there as the company's legal representative. At least that's what he had said. The hotel event hall was packed. Reporters, investors, company employees, all waiting for the announcement from the CEO, who had survived the most talked-about scandal of the year. Maya was backstage, reviewing notes she didn't need to review when Jude appeared beside her. "You're nervous," he said. "I'm not. You're chewing the pen cap." Maya looked down. The cap was completely destroyed. "Okay, maybe a little," Jude smiled. In the last 6 months, he had been promoted to financial analysis manager and finally learned to tie his own shoelaces. "Progress. Relax," he said. "It's just a press conference. You've faced much worse." "I know, it's just that." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't know how to explain the strange feeling she had since waking up that morning, as if something big was about to happen. "Maya." Robert Ashford's voice made her turn. He was impeccable as always. Back at the office 4 months ago, fully recovered and more annoyingly organized than ever. "It's time. Caleb wants you on stage." "On stage? Why? I was going to be in the audience. Change of plans." Robert smiled in a way Maya couldn't decipher. "Let's go." She followed Robert to the side of the stage, her heart beating faster than it should. In the center, Caleb was already positioned in front of the microphone, the spotlights illuminating his face. He looked calm, confident, devastatingly handsome in the dark blue suit Maya had helped choose. They had been together officially for 5 months. After weeks of working dinners that ended with kisses on the mansion's porch, Maya had finally admitted that this was no longer just professional. Caleb had celebrated by ordering more wine and saying she was the only person in the world capable of making him wait so long for something obvious. Now, watching him on stage, Maya felt her chest fill with that feeling that still caught her by surprise sometimes. Love. "Good afternoon, everyone," Caleb began, his voice filling the hall. "Thank you for being here. I know you came to hear about Lawson Tech's new expansion project, and I promise we'll talk about that. But first, there's something more important I need to do." Maya frowned. This wasn't in the script. 6 months ago, Caleb continued, I was sitting in a courtroom, about to lose everything. My company, my reputation, my future. And then a woman came stumbling through the door, with crooked glasses and papers flying everywhere, and announced she was going to save me. Laughter in the audience. Maya felt her face burn. "I thought she was crazy," Caleb said, smiling. "And maybe she is a little, but she's also the most courageous, determined, and extraordinary person I've ever met." He turned and looked directly at Maya backstage. "Maya, can you come here, please?" Her heart stopped. Jude pushed her gently. Robert smiled as if he knew something. The entire audience turned to look at her. Maya walked to the stage with wobbly legs, each step echoing in the hall's silence. When she reached Caleb's side, he took her hand. "Maya Turner," he said, his voice soft now, almost intimate despite the microphones. "You came into my life on the worst possible day and transformed everything. You taught me that trusting someone isn't weakness. You showed me that love doesn't need to make sense to be real." He let go of her hand and, to Maya's absolute shock, knelt down. The audience held its breath. So did Maya. Caleb took a small box from his jacket pocket. When he opened it, a diamond ring sparkled under the spotlights. "I spent my whole life building a company," he said. "But only when I met you did I understand what's really worth building. A life, a family, a future." He looked at her with shining eyes. "Maya Turner, will you marry me?" The silence lasted only a second, but for Maya, it felt like an eternity. She looked at Caleb, the man who had started as a client and become her best friend, her partner, her love. The man who cooked for her at 2 in the morning when she worked late, who sent security guards to protect her mother without thinking twice, who made her laugh even on the worst days. "Did you rehearse this or improvise like I did in court?" she asked, her voice choked. Caleb laughed, his eyes welling up. "A little of both." Maya felt tears stream down her face. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will." The hall erupted in applause. Caleb stood up and kissed her, a kiss that tasted of tears and laughter and promises. The audience applauded, flashes went off, Jude shouted something incomprehensible in the background. But Maya didn't hear any of it. She only heard her own heart, beating hard against the chest of the man she loved. When they separated, Caleb rested his forehead against hers. "I love you, Maya Turner." "I love you too, Caleb Lawson." She smiled through her tears. "Even though you're impossible." "It's my charm." She laughed, and he hugged her, and the whole world seemed to be exactly as it should be. 6 months earlier, Maya had stumbled into a courtroom not knowing what awaited her. Now, she knew exactly where she belonged. In the arms of the man she had saved, and who, in all the ways that mattered, had saved her too. What did you think of Maya's courage in facing all of this alone in court? Leave your opinion in the comments. On a scale of 0 to 10, what rating would you give this story? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to receive more exciting stories like this one.